Welcome to the John Harrison Podcast. Statistics show us that about 70% of people are disengaged in the workplace. Obviously, that affects bottom lines of companies, individual, their own engagement at work, but also affects families and communities. We don't want to just be frustrated about things that are going on in the workplace or in the world. We want to do something about it. So we're going to talk about this while others aren't, and we hope you will join us on this journey.
Welcome back to the John Harrison Podcast. This is Madeline, and we have the whole team again with us today. I've got Jason, Melissa, and John. And today we're going to talk about setting boundaries with coworkers, and can you be friends with coworkers? And not even coworkers, but as a leader, can you be friends with your employees? Should you be going out with them, doing things outside of work? There's just a lot of lines that can be blurred with that. So, John, I'm going to pass it to you first.
Yeah, this is a difficult one, and we've had people talk about this in our sessions. I dealt with this at Caterpillar, and there's, again, I would say no hard and fast rules. What we're trying to do, as we do in our sessions or just in this podcast, is just surface some things and get you to think a little bit about this. So certainly, Madeline just said, if you're a supervisor and your direct reports, should we be Facebook friends? Should we go out and have drinks Friday night? Should we go to each other's houses? And again, we would say no hard and fast rules. I will say this as a supervisor, my personal opinion on that is not to be Facebook friends with your direct reports. Now, we can talk about that as peers. It's not that assuming the worst, but you can go, no, we're all friends, everything's good, but that can change pretty quickly. And there's layoffs at your company, or there's a scandal, or there's just someone gets irritated with you. And they go, well, sure, like Jason was out with all his friends. I didn't get invited to the party. I didn't get invited to go out on the boat and hang out. So that's, to me, I would just be careful about things like that. On the other hand, I had an employee that worked for me once that visited my church and said, hey, would it be weird if we went to your church? And I said, no, we're not going to stop you from going to the church we go to. Mm-hmm. But I kind of appreciated that this person asked. They said, would that be hard for me? And in that case, no, we're not. But I think the person was thinking, I might look like I'm sucking up to the boss if we attend that church or we go to that club or your kid plays basketball with mine. So this can get really kind of fuzzy and strange sometimes for people. So Melissa, you were in a unique role in your last, really your whole career until you came with us, being in human resources. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, this one's kind of tough for me because I spent a lot of my years working without any friends. And that was a very conscious decision that I made early on in my career. So the larger company that I worked for early in my career, they would move us around as HR support from time to time to different areas of the organization. And I found myself making connections with people that I felt like I could be friends with, but I wouldn't necessarily let myself be friends with them going out afterwards or, hanging out on the boat on the weekends or any of that kind of stuff, because I just felt it was easier in my line of work to keep those lines clearly defined. Mm-hmm. But if I were to be moved to a different part of the organization, I then found myself becoming friends with some of those people. Right. And now have literally been friends with some of them for 25, 30 years. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I just felt it was better to keep those lines clearly drawn and kind of a hard and fast line of where that was drawn because of the type of work I did. I did occasionally find myself on a business trip from time to time, and people were chatting about this or that, and it could have been compensation, commissions, behaviors, decisions they were making at work, and I would just kind of sit silently to the side and not necessarily comment, make facial expressions or otherwise, because I knew that, one, I couldn't because of the position I was in, but two, I didn't feel like it would add any value to the conversation in any way. So again, I think a lot of this comes with maturity and your ability to decide when to be a part of and how you're going to be a part of a relationship. And each one of those are unique for different reasons. And it's truly a case-by-case situation.
And Jason, you've had similar, and you've kind of been in the HR world a little bit and the accounting world,
right?
Finance, which is could be both of those could be sensitive. So
right. Well, and also let me talk about that in just a second, because I had a unique situation where I was friends with a previous boss of mine. And so that actually the next place that wanted to interview me was like, he was my friend as well, right? And so he's like, well, how's this going to affect our friendship if you come work here? And so I said, well, just why don't you talk to my other boss? Because we were friends as well, so that way you can make sure that I can handle having that relationship and getting the work done. And I know where the lines are, right? So because of course, I wouldn't be asking for favors and stuff, you know what I'm saying? Just so he could find out just where I was, mentally with all that. So I guess it turned out because he ended up hiring me, so that was good. So there are those cases where even that comes into play, like, oh, your friend's going to be your boss. What do you do there? So I've had those situations. And then also, even as employees, I've been friends with a lot of different employees over the years, kind of peers, I guess you'd say. And we just try not to take pictures. I mean, not that we don't take pictures. We don't post pictures, should I say. Right? We always take pictures. But we just don't post the pictures just because we don't want people to feel jealous or left out or this or that. But yeah, I mean, I've kind of had those friends over the years, like Melissa, where we've been friends for a long time. And so I don't want to...
Did you ever have people come to you, Jason, and say, just not directly, tell me about this person's salary but hey, I feel like so-and-so must be doing really well at the company. They just bought a new vehicle and like hinted at wanting
for sure.
So what do you say if somebody...
Well, yeah, just because I am in those positions that I do know most of those things. Most of the time I just say, well, we can't talk about that, based on, confidentiality, of course, you wouldn't want me to share your information, right? So just take it like that, because
most people get the signal, I would assume.
Oh, for sure. And they say, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't mean to, and some people might innocently ask. Might not be even as direct. They might just bring up something that, is in passing, and either I'll just play it off or won't answer.
Yeah,
and
you're such a good jokester. I feel like
Yes.
you would come up with some quick,
yeah.
just turn it around and move on.
Yeah, that's usually what I do. Just bring up another subject and let's go. So.
Well, if they're putting you in an awkward situation, right?
Right.
Then you kind of feel obligated to be awkward back in some way. I mean, not in a malicious way, but to say, man, it's not cool to put me in that situation.
Yeah.
I can't talk about that.
Right. Yes, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. And I think it's also, it's the same, but it's also different in smaller companies versus larger companies. We were just talking with a client about this situation, and she's from a pretty large company. And so she was saying, yeah, she has very clear boundaries. But then I was thinking, I'm like, with us four, we probably do have some boundaries that we subconsciously do, but also we're, us ladies meet every now and then to talk about Bible study. I know, y'all probably go out to dinner with each other sometimes. It's just, the lines are a little blurred, but it's less of a thing where there's tons of employees and there's people that can be left out. I would say you definitely have to be careful if you go and do things with somebody and then you come up with inside jokes, or you come back to work and you're having those
fun with
yes, and then you start, you think you're doing that innocently, but also you're leaving those couple people out. So there's definitely some lines.
Well, and you go back to the core values, right? We're a really small team, but in a larger company, you hope the values are defined, right? Number one, being respect for each other and one another. And yes, our lines do get blurred a little bit because we're so small, but we have respect for one another and know when not to talk about what we talked about in Bible study, for example. Or if John and Jason are having breakfast, and they have a conversation about something life-oriented, they're not going to come back and talk about that in front of us. So it's important to have that wherewithal and awareness about the topic.
And maturity, you should never talk about other people, but specifically, you should not gossip. And I think I've definitely experienced that in my other positions, other jobs, where it's you're talking about this person and then you're going and being buddies with somebody else. And it's just high school stuff. So I do feel really grateful that this small team, we're never gossiping about, certain people.
Well,
each
even
other.
So when, Melissa and Madeline and Brianna from our team meets with Jen on things, And if this is your first listening, Jen's my wife, and she doesn't share any of that with me. Like, she doesn't say, even if it was in the right spirit, you might want to be praying for Melissa because she's struggling with, she never does that. Yeah. And that's even within our house, within our marriage, and she could, and it would stay, of course, right there. But I think just some of those boundaries are important. And let me just also say this as peers or supervisor, a lot of this is innocent too. Like, let's say you're a big football fan. And on Monday morning, you start talking to your other employees that are football fans. And you spend 20 minutes talking about Razorbacks or NFL game or whatever. But your other coworker, their daughter had a dance recital over the weekend, and you don't even ask. Not because you're purposely showing favoritism and you don't care about that person, but it just doesn't even come to your mind. And so it can be any hobby or whatever that people share. So Tanner, that used to work for us, he was a baseball fan, and we would talk about baseball. But I was trying to be cognizant, right? A lot of that we didn't do for 20 minutes in our meeting, because I know Melissa and Madeline could care less about the Cubs and the Cardinals.
Sit there quietly.
That's right.
Wait for you to
but I mean,
finish.
at some point, that's self-awareness too.
Right.
So, and I think just being aware of what people have going on in their lives, you can certainly ask anybody, how was your weekend? What'd you do this weekend? But if it's, oh man, did you watch that game? And it's 20 minutes. Or, man, we went duck hunting too. And I don't think a lot of times it's intentional favoritism, but realize who's around you and what's important to them. What did they spend time doing this weekend, or things like that as well. I think, so with any of this stuff, right, there's not a hard and fast rule. And if some consultant told you exactly how to handle this, I'd be concerned, because there's too many variables. But I also will just add this. I think social media adds a whole nother layer. And Jason kind of talked about this. It's a little sad that we go, well, don't take any pictures at this event, because if I post it and somebody's not invited, you don't have to invite everybody to your parties at your house or whatever. And so now it's kind of interesting. This is kind of a thing with kids now. We have to invite everybody in their class to their birthday party. And I get it, but it's like, when we lived in Australia, it must have happened in Australia before here, because Grace was 7 or something, and Jen said something to her teacher about, we're going to have a birthday party this weekend. And they were like, now you need to invite all the kids. And there was 30 kids. And I'm like, what? Wait, they're not all close friends. Right. But they're like, well, you don't want to hurt their feelings. Again, I understand that, but that's happening with adults. That's true. So you have some people over to your house and you post it, and then again, all the employees go, well, I guess Jason likes Madeline better than me, because that's unfortunate that that's the case. Yeah. But I would also just say have some boundaries with that stuff about what you post and all that.
That's so good, John. Yeah. I wanted to remind you guys before we jump off here, but you can submit questions for the podcast through our website. So I will leave that down in the description box if you want to submit any questions for topics that we can discuss on here. So thank you again, and we'll catch you next episode.
Thank you for joining us today on the John Harrison Podcast. As you know, we believe that a positive work culture creates a ripple effect that extends into families and communities. If you found anything of value in today's episode, please share it with somebody so they can hear it as well. And if you have questions or topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes, please fill out the form below.